I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
This week, we are going to be talking The Devil Wears Prada, the 2006 movie starring Anne Hathaway, Meryl Streep, Stanley Tucci, and Emily Blunt. Yeah, this is a 20-year-old movie. The sequel, The Devil Wears Prada 2, just came out as we are recording this, like a day or two before we recorded this. The movie came out, and right before we recorded, we found out that the movie has already turned a profit. It is already like the 6th highest grossing movie of 2026. And, you know what? If that's your jam, if 20 years ago you were a teenager or something who watched the original movie and you want to go see the sequel, I'm not going to shame you. Nostalgia's in. I mean, last year we had Freakier Friday, another 20-year-old sequel to a movie. This year we're getting a new Toy Story movie. We're getting a new He-Man movie. We're getting a new Mortal Kombat movie. We're getting a new Street Fighter movie. Nostalgia is just in, for better or worse.
Yeah, and the thing is, we had done Anne Hathaway's other big Disney-owned movies, and, through the Fox buyout, this is now a Disney-owned property. So it was time to do this one. And the thing is that I know that this was a first watch for you. It was not a first watch for me because I was kind of a fan of everybody that was in this movie, even though we talked about this off mic, but neither of us are the target audience for this. But I watched it when it came out, not in the theaters, but when it first hit, DVD or whatever, because I liked all the actors in the film. And it was getting a lot of buzz for just being a good movie. So even though I'm not really the sort of person who's like, oh, let me watch movies about the fashion industry or whatever, I watched this relatively quickly after it came out. And I do remember thinking that even though it was not maybe a movie particularly geared for me, it was a well-made movie and a well-acted movie. However, I had then and still have now a lot of issues with this movie, and we will get into that.
Yeah. The reason I never watched this movie is, like you said, I'm not the target audience for this kind of a movie. I'm not a fashion person. Everything I heard about the movie is like, this doesn't really excite me. This doesn't interest me. I'm not going to say it's a bad movie. Again, I did not see it at the time. It's not for me. Sidebar, a lot of people actually need to start saying that. Just because you're not interested in the movie doesn't mean it's a bad movie. It's just not for you. So, just ignore it and move on with your life. But, that doesn't get the clicks and the likes and the views that everybody wants. So what do I know?
It's okay for some things to not be for you. Other things are for you. That's the wonder of art, is that some things are for you and some things are for other people. And that's great.
So yeah, if I was one of, quote, those people, I'd be saying, oh, this movie sucks and this movie's blah, blah, blah. I don't see the point in this movie existing. And I probably could have made millions of views on YouTube just being a total bonerhead. But, that's not me. But, when the sequel was coming up, we decided, okay, let's just actually watch this movie. And I just said, okay, maybe it is time for me to actually sit down and watch this movie because I have heard so many good things about the movie. The hype going into the sequel was palpable from the people who grew up with this movie. So I said, okay, what is this movie? Is it worth the hype? And, is this sequel necessary? Again, I have not seen the sequel, so
yeah,
I don't
neither have
know.
I. I mean, it has literally just hit theaters as we're recording this. Neither of us have, again, we're not the target audience for this movie. I will probably watch the sequel when it hits, digital home release, whatever.
When it hits Disney Plus, maybe,
Yeah.
So, what is this movie about? So, the movie is about a young wannabe journalist named Andy Sachs, played by Anne Hathaway, trying to get her foot in the door into any kind of publication and ending up working at Runway magazine, run by Miranda Priestley, played by Meryl Streep. And she gets swung into the world of fashion. And she's kind of looked down on because she's not a stylish person. And the first big complaint both of us would have of the movie is she's fat. Anne Hathaway. This is Anne Hathaway at her peak. And you're going to tell me, you look at Anne Hathaway, and you're going to call this woman fat. You're going to call this woman ugly. We had the same conversation when we talked about the Princess Diaries. Like, they try to, quote, ugly up Anne Hathaway for that movie, and it just looks like Anne Hathaway with her hair tied back,
Yeah,
It's just...
and I'm gonna say I thought about it while watching this movie, and I think I kind of mentioned it in the Princess Diaries too. If I didn't mention it, I definitely thought it, but it really hit me watching this that when they make over Anne Hathaway in a movie, most of the time I think she looks better before. And that is definitely true in this movie. I was, it hasn't been as long as a lot of these rewatches since the last time I saw it, because I actually watched this, like, I don't know, a year or so ago maybe, when I was just kind of bored and I ran across it and I went, I haven't watched that in a while. I wonder if it holds up, and I watched it then. It hasn't been a super long time since I saw it last, but I had even forgotten a few things since my last rewatch. And we talked about this off mic. I had forgotten that it is a plot point in the movie that Stanley Tucci's character, especially Nigel, I think his name is, he is constantly calling Anne Hathaway's character fat because she is a size 6. And they are wanting no larger than a size 4 for their models or their assistants or like any, I mean, preferably smaller than that, but they absolutely no larger than a size 4.
6 is the new 14.
Yeah, and I sent you a picture of me when I was at my skinniest once I wore adult size clothes, which was when I was in high school. And the outfit I was wearing there, I told you, I think that was a size 10. It might have been a size 8. And I look back at that picture and I think, did I even have internal organs? Like, I can't even imagine, you know, and I am the height that is desired for a runway model. That I am in the usual height range for what they want for a runway model. Anne Hathaway is a bit shorter than that. And so I mean the idea of, someone Anne Hathaway's size, them wanting her to be smaller, and she's already very petite in this movie, and they keep calling her fat and telling her she needs to lose weight. Emily Blunt's entire plot thread is her trying to lose weight, and Emily Blunt is the smallest I have ever seen Emily Blunt in a movie in this film. Even Meryl Streep, who has never been a large woman, is smaller than she usually is in this film and everything. And the thing is, like, Stanley Tucci's character and I'm not blaming like Stanley Tucci necessarily, it's like how the character is written, but like, his character Nigel just keeps looking at Andy and Anne Hathaway's character. He disparagingly calls her 6 throughout the movie as a way of calling her fat. And I keep wanting to go like, well, what size are you, Stanley Tucci? And he's not a large man in this movie. He's a fit man, but like he's definitely larger than what would fit in a size 6 dress, So like, where does that character get off telling a woman she's fat, Where does anybody get off telling Anne Hathaway she's fat, first of all? And like, I get that is the way that the fashion industry is, all of that. Like, at no point does anybody look at the people who are doing this and say, you people are awful and you need to shut up.
If anything, Anne Hathaway kind of starts out as that kind of person. Her friend group is definitely those kind of people, but as the movie goes on, she gets further and further into the fashion world. She starts to sympathize with the fashion people, much to her own friends' dismay. She's becoming, quote, one of them. So it's like,
I'm not even sure her friends are like that. And shout out to the people who play her friends. We've got, most of the people in this movie we've talked about before because they've been in lots of other movies we've talked about. But a couple of these people I don't think we've talked about. Rich Summer plays Doug, which is one of her friends. And if you know him at all, you're going to know him from Mad Men. He was great in that series. But, like, he knows more about the fashion industry than she does. And when she starts bringing stuff, little gifts and trinkets and stuff from Miranda as her job progresses, he is very happy to get them. And then her other friend, Lily, who is played by Tracy Toms, who, if you know her, you're going to know her from Rent. And she is like very into, she's like, oh my goodness, you brought me a Marc Jacobs bag. Yay, and all. And even her boyfriend, who is played by Adrian Grenier, who I kind of mostly know from this, but I think some people might know him from Entourage, which I never watched. So I recognize him mostly from this movie. But the thing is like, even he's like, wait, you got a job at a fashion magazine? Have they seen how you dress? And I'm like, my dude, you are her boyfriend.
He's joking in that scene. Let's be real. It's like, wow, you're gonna, like, they're having a kind of a romantic moment eating like grilled cheese sandwiches. And he says, really, you're gonna go there wearing that? And he kind of lovingly smacks him. So it's like, it's more of a loving joke than a, oh yeah, you have no fashion sense whatsoever, babe.
And to me, that comes off as boomer humor. It's a very take my wife please kind of joke to me. Like, I get that the script wants it to come off as a joke, but that's my perspective as, the woman who has heard from a guy too many times, like, just a joke. And it's like, is it though? Or are you just insulting me and then being Schrodinger's douchebag afterwards? So, speaking of her boyfriend, I want to talk about her boyfriend because he doesn't get like a lot of screen time, but a lot of people want to make the boyfriend in this movie, Nate, out to be like the bad guy. Like, he wasn't very supportive of Andy and her job, and like, as she went further in her career, he was like, you're ignoring me and stuff. And I'm like, I don't think he's the bad guy. And also, I don't think that whoever wrote the screenplay, I don't know if it's like this in the book, because this was based off a book. I don't know if there's like a, if that character exists in the book and if he's the same way and whatever. But in the movie, her boyfriend is supposed to be working in restaurant industry. He is a cook. He eventually, by the end of the movie, becomes a sous chef, and he is working in apparently rather upscale restaurants in New York. And I don't know if you've ever, you know, read any of Anthony Bourdain's books or, looked into any of the documentaries about what it's like in the restaurant industry or anything, but that dude's job would be at least as high pressure as Andy's, if not more, at the beginning of the movie.
And he even comes out and saying this, he's not judging her for working at a fashion magazine, dealing with, snooty people, because he deals with snooty people every day and he doesn't say a word about it because it'll cost him his job. So he's not really upset about her for dealing with the snooty people. His issue is that he feels she is losing her integrity. The girl he fell in love with would not stand for the abuse that she's taking from Miranda. And she's just taking it and taking it and taking it because it'll further her career. But her career is just being an assistant. She wants to be a journalist, and the only thing she's writing is emails. And that's kind of his whole thing at the end. He's like, you could be a stripper for all I care. I just want you to have some integrity. And I can see how that can be interpreted as pay attention to me and you should be doing this, that, and the other. He's proud of her for doing this job and doing what she can to make her dream of being a journalist come true. His whole thing is that he believes that she is losing herself. She's letting herself be stepped on by this mogul just because she is the editor-in-chief of the biggest fashion magazine in the United States, and she has this pull. And she even threatens her. Miranda even threatens Andy, saying, I can make sure you never have a job with any other publication. So from Nate's perspective, Andy is allowing herself to get stepped on, when if this was anyone else, she wouldn't stand for it. That's his issue. At least that's how I interpret the issue. And then ultimately it leads to their breakup because, it's not you no longer have time for me because you're with Miranda all the time. It's, where is this person that I love that would take no BS from people? Because she doesn't at the beginning of the movie. She doesn't take BS from her friends. She doesn't take BS from her father. But the minute she steps into that office, she's taking it from Miranda and she's taking it from Emily because she wants this foot in the door to being a journalist.
Yeah, and she even says that she's going to do this job for 1 year because she gets told in the movie that if she does this job for a year and if she can survive Miranda for a year, that she will be able to basically write her ticket to any job she wants in publishing. This will be the gold stamp on her resume from here on out, And the thing is that this movie is based on a true story, supposedly. We should probably talk about where this came from. And none of this is a secret, really. And in fact, this movie kind of almost didn't get made because it was so not a secret where the original book came from. But the book was written by a woman named Lauren Weisberger, who was an assistant to the editor-in-chief of Vogue magazine, Anna Wintour. And after she did that, she took like a writing class or whatever, and someone talked her into writing her experiences working for Anna Wintour into a book, a fictionalized book, but, apparently not that fictionalized from what it's been said. And I mean, there are lots of things to be lots of things to be said in favor of Anna Wintour in the fact that she is very good at the job she does, which is why she's been doing it for so many decades. There is, I think probably the most realistic line in the entire movie is right at the end when Miranda kind of justifies all of her horrific actions by saying, no one can do what I do. And she's not bragging in that moment. The way it is delivered, both in the acting by Meryl Streep and in the writing, the setup of the writing and the delivery there, is Miranda is not bragging. She is stating what she sees as fact and what is probably fact from what we have seen in the movie.
The fact that she has an entire list of contributors to the magazine that she discovered, that she mentored, that are ready to walk, that because the owner of the magazine is trying to push her out for someone younger. The loyalty that the people at the magazine have for her. Yes, she is, the dragon lady, as she is called in the film, but there's enough loyalty in the magazine for her that pretty much everyone working for the magazine is ready to walk if she is removed as editor-in-chief.
Yeah. And the thing about that list is, how I said this movie almost didn't get made because it was kind of obvious where the story came from? Yeah. Anna Wintour is such a force in fashion and, kind of publishing in general, but specifically fashion, that how they needed all of those high fashion clothes and all that to put all the models in and everything? Yeah. A lot of designers did not want to participate in this movie because they were worried that Anna Wintour would not look kindly upon them letting their products be used in a movie that was, well, based on Anna Wintour and not very kind about how she was as a person. So this, it is interesting that eventually, though, Anna Wintour did show up to one of the premieres that was held for the film, and she wore Prada to the premiere she went to. And eventually she said that she liked the movie, and I don't know if you watched the Oscars this year, but she appeared on the Oscars with Anne Hathaway, kind of doing a send up of that Miranda Priestley kind of idea of her, where Anne Hathaway was like, oh, I do believe they presented the costuming award. Anne Hathaway was like, oh, I'm doing Devil Wears Prada too and everything, and Anna, it's so great to be here with you and everything. And Anna Wintour was like, yes, I wish I could say the same or something. She was just like really mean to Anne Hathaway and stuff. It was all in the script, but she seems to have in the last 20 years kind of leaned into that kind of idea of her. But I will say that while the movie does kind of say that, yes, Miranda is effective, but she's not a happy person. Like we're shown her family life is awful and she doesn't have any friends and she does, all that kind of stuff.
She has an ex-husband that she has to deal with. She's going through a divorce and she's trying to make time and for her two girls and try to be the best mom she can be. So juggling this career, juggling an ex-husband, a soon-to-be ex-husband, and two daughters, I do like that it does kind of humanize Miranda in that respect.
Yeah, but at no point does the movie go like, it would be possible for her to be effective without being horrible. The only thing that we really get is that I think it's like the the journalist that hits on Anne Hathaway later, the one that's like, well, if you weren't dating somebody, I'd be, hitting on you right now or whatever. That guy, who is the guy that was in the TV show The Mentalist. Simon Baker is the actor's name. But anyway, he says something about like Miranda being awful, and he keeps trying to get Andy to say like that she hates Miranda. And Andy keeps saying like, I don't actually hate her. I wish that she would do things differently or whatever. The thing is that she defends Miranda during that scene, saying like, if she were a man, nobody would blink an eye about it,
She's right.
She's right. However, what the movie needs to do, and why I think that even though people like the movie for, the way it's acted and the way it's filmed and some of the clothing and, whatever, I think that I've been seeing a lot of people recently reevaluating this movie and going like, yeah, we don't do this anymore. Like, I'm not saying there aren't people who put up with like super toxic workplaces like this anymore, but we don't, I think, as a culture, at least on the workaday level, I know that like a lot of, I'm trying to think, I think systemically you still find people trying to push this narrative, but I think that, just people like us, like people that just have day jobs and stuff, I think that we are at the point now where culturally we're like, yeah, we don't do that anymore. Where
Again,
we would watch a movie like this and we would go like, Andy, you should have, one, never taken the job, but two, you should have quit really early on.
I mean, Stanley Tucci, right when he goes, poor you, would have gotten five fingers across the face.
Yeah.
But, or, right before that, where Miranda is demanding that Andy get her a flight out of Miami in the middle of a hurricane so she can see her daughter's recital. But it's like, I understand you want to be there for your daughters, but there is a hurricane. No one is flying out of Miami.
What's so funny is she keeps saying like, call up all of our like billionaire friends and ask them if we can borrow their private jets. And I kept going like, if I were writing this movie, she would do that and the plane would go down with Miranda on it.
Like again, haven't seen the new movie, but like a character like Miranda in today's world would be an HR nightmare.
Well, everybody in that company is an HR nightmare. I mean, Stanley Tucci is an HR nightmare,
Mm-hmm.
It's just like she walks in and immediately, I mean, and I'll give it to Stanley Tucci, like the stuff he says is awful, but the way he delivers it is just golden. Like, he's the most awful person when Andy says like, Miranda has met me. She's seen how I dress. And Stanley Tucci immediately goes, have you? Which is, the way he delivers it is a hilarious line, but it's also absolutely awful. And screw you, Nigel, for saying that. Also, here's the thing. I absolutely hate the way Miranda Priestley dresses for like 90% of this movie. I think the outfits that they put her in are so ugly, and if anybody other than Meryl Streep was wearing them, you would be like, wow, that is an ugly outfit. But Meryl Streep is such an icon that you're like, well, it's clothes on Meryl Streep. This can't possibly be bad,
Honestly, Meryl Streep could wear a potato sack and make it look good.
I know, but like, if you just look at it, if you were to like cover her face and just look at the outfit on its own, like a lot of the stuff she's wearing is just awful. Like it's like remember that old thing about look in the mirror and take one accessory off? Miranda, you need to learn that. It's like, you are wearing too much gold, gaudy, non Miranda, what is that jacket? It's like half of her outfits are just awful. And then the thing is I really like some of the outfit. Like, I know that they like style her hair to be a little more messy and stuff, kind of like they do in Princess Diaries. But as far as like the outfits and stuff she wears before she gets her glow up makeover or whatever, I kind of like those. Like there's that whole awful cerulean monologue that Meryl Streep gives, and the only reason it's like remembered is because you could give Meryl Streep an old phone book and it comes off as an amazing monologue. But people want to act like this monologue actually means something important when honestly it's ridiculous.
You see blue and it's just blue, but it's not just blue. And it's like, I don't even remember all of it, but that's kind of the only part that I remember.
Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, I have it in front of me, and you go to your closet and you select that lumpy blue sweater, for instance, because you're trying to tell the world that you take yourself too seriously to care about what you put on your back. But what you don't know is that that sweater is not just blue, it's not turquoise, it's not lapis, it's actually cerulean. It's like, and the thing is, I hate to say it, but every time I hear the word cerulean, I always think of an episode of X-Files because it was the first time I ever heard the word cerulean. And there's an episode of X-Files where somebody like hypnotizes a guy by saying the phrase, and then he sees like a semi truck with the word cerulean written in front of it. And like in his brain, the truck disappears. And so he pulls out in front of the truck and gets crushed by the truck because like the guy has hypnotized him to not see the truck anymore. And I was like, okay. And then it wasn't until years later that I realized that like cerulean blue was like actually a shade of blue and wasn't just like the name of a company they made up for this episode of X-Files because I was a kid at the time and that was the only context I had for it. So every time now I hear the word cerulean, that's all I think of is cerulean blue as a gentle breeze. But the thing is this whole speech from Miranda is supposed to be like, even you like pathetic little normies with no fashion sense, your clothing choices are decided because of the people in the fashion houses and stuff. And the thing is that is true because it does filter down in a similar way to kind of what she says. Okay? The thing is that I do not study high fashion, but I am very interested in the history of fashion and clothing because it's part of what I study through my medieval hobbies. And there is a way that what the wealthy do as a trend filters down within a year or 2 years into the middle class and then, the working class, the poor, whatever. And there is a grain of truth to what she says, but she's talking about like as if what she does is somehow like important to the world, and it's not. Is it influential in the world? Yes, but influential and important are not the same thing. And Miranda has conflated those two ideas in her brain. That because she has influence in a sphere, it means that she is somehow important to humanity.
She says as much in the movie. Like, or no, Stanley Tucci says this, you look at this magazine and you just see a magazine. It's more than just a magazine. It's, and he goes through his whole rant on it. You don't care about it, but we're important. We're changing cultures and whatever else he says. Because again, only half remember that mom. So it's like they do believe that they are important, that they are changing cultures and whatnot. When you're right in there, they influence culture, but they don't change culture.
I mean, you can argue that they change culture, but the thing is that they are, there has always been a way that fashion and culture intersect and mirror each other, and there are ways that, especially women's fashion will go along with things like, certain feminist trends, when women are fighting for their voting rights, when the suffragette movement started and everything. They are, when women in the 70s start going through that feminist wave, fashion plays a part in that. So I'm not saying that they're completely disconnected. However, it is a bit different than someone deciding that, like, the color for this year is cerulean, And it, for Miranda and for Nigel to buy into this idea that, like, we are the cornerstone of the culture because we have decided that skirts are going to change up or down an inch this season is a bit bizarre. And the fact that this film is a comedy, and a lot of people talk about it kind of satirizing the fashion industry. And it does to a certain extent, but I think the thing that annoys me is that even though at the end of the movie, Andy does kind of go like, okay, I'm done with this. I don't want to be the type of person that I would need to be to make it in this. I don't want to be the type of person I would need to be to make it in this particular industry in the way that Miranda has, there is no real comeuppance for anyone, We understand that Miranda is a unhappy person, but at the end of the movie, she is still kind of doing the same thing and being the same person.
She wins. Like, the only quote comeuppance that is coming to her is the owner of the magazine wanting to push her out because he feels that she no longer has her finger on the pulse of fashion and wants someone younger, someone from the French magazine to take over that editor-in-chief role. And then Miranda flips it on her head while also screwing over Stanley Tucci's character.
Who is the closest thing that Miranda has to a friend.
Because that whole situation is, earlier in the movie, we meet this fashion guy, is trying to get his foot in the door, and he gets another influential fashion person is trying to say, hey, I'm going to sponsor you. I'm going to invest in your company, and we're going to take your brand worldwide. Great. Awesome. And Stanley Tucci is going to take the job with this fashion designer as the president of the company because he needs a partner to help with this expanding of the company, which means he's leaving the magazine.
And we are told that it is going to pay an obscene amount of money. Like, Stanley Tucci's character is about to make just all of the money in the world for moving from the magazine to this fashion house.
And he pretty much gets to call his own shots. As he says, for the first time in my life, I'm in control of my life. So you think, okay, he's going to get out of Miranda's thumb and live finally. But nope, that young woman that you're going to try to replace me with, no, I'm going to put her in that position, so she's no longer competition. And I'm going to stay here at the magazine. Completely screwing over arguably her most loyal employee.
Yeah.
As Stanley Tucci's character says, she encouraged to take this job. Like, it's for 1 second, it's like, does Miranda know about this? No. Of course she knows. She told me to take this job. So, Nigel takes this job. He's encouraged to take this job by Miranda to spread his wings and fly. Yay. But then, okay, so we're going to take Jacqueline from the French magazine. We're going to give her your job, Miranda, and then you're out. No. We're going to give Jacqueline the job at the fashion house, have her get paid an obscene amount of money. Now she's no longer my competition. I get to stay here. Sorry, Nigel. I'll owe you one later. And he's not even sure he's going to get that. As Andy says, do you really believe she'll owe you? No, but I have to have hope.
Yeah, I mean, like, look at all the people in this movie, like, that are kind of awful. Miranda is awful to everyone, and she ends up basically winning at the end of the movie. I mean, yeah, her marriage falls apart and everything, but we can kind of tell that that's not the thing she cares about most in life. She cares about her job more than anything else, and she retains her job by the end of it, I
mean, again, there's a humanizing moment where her divorce is about to become public. And she says, I don't care what the tabloids say about me. I just don't want them talking about my kids. The fact that she gets Andy to basically steal a not yet published manuscript of the not yet published 7th Harry Potter novel, so her daughters can be the first children in the world to read it. That's a whole nother situation.
Yeah.
So there are the moments where she's very caring about her children. But the fact that she's willing to, have her daughters lose their father figure. Is the ex-husband their father? Is this current husband their father?
I think from something she says in the movie, she mentions, tell my ex-husband that the girls are doing so I believe that the girls are the children from the previous marriage. But the thing is that at the at the end of the movie, yeah, her marriage has fallen apart, but she's kept the job she wanted. That was the most important thing to her. And, she really doesn't get any comeuppance, Emily Blunt's character is awful, and yeah, she gets hit by a car in one of the funnier scenes in the movie, and I hate that that's one of the funnier scenes in the movie, but it comes out of absolutely nowhere to the point where you just, it blindsides you so much when you're watching the movie that you just can't help but laugh,
Yeah, but Emily gets screwed over. Like, throughout the entire movie, she's talking about going on different diets and crash dieting, trying to lose weight because Paris Fashion Week is coming up. And since now at the beginning of the movie, she's been promoted to being the personal assistant to Miranda, while that's Andy's job in the beginning, is the assistant to the assistant.
Yeah, the first assistant and the second assistant, as they call it.
Yeah. So Emily is basically starving herself because she wants to look good for Fashion Week, because she's going to go with Miranda to Paris for Fashion Week, to the point where she gets sick because she's starving herself. And then Miranda takes that opportunity from her because she's now too sick to go to Paris, and then gives it to Andy. Andy is not given a choice in this. She does not want to take Emily's opportunity. Emily has been talking about this the entire movie up to this point. Fashion Week. This is her dream, basically. And now Miranda has taken that dream away from her and giving it to Andy, who never wanted this to begin with. And now Emily has the heat onto Andy, not onto Miranda.
Yeah, I will say, though, that at the end of the film, though, Andy does, give her all of the clothing and stuff. that she got in Paris, which was one of the big things Emily wanted. Emily was like, I'll get to go and they'll give me all this couture and I'll get to wear it and it'll be amazing. And, I'll get to wear Valentino and so at the end of the movie, when she quits, Andy calls up Emily and says, hey, look, I've got all this stuff I've got from Paris and I have nowhere to wear it. Would you be nice enough to take it off my hands? And then Emily, she knows what Andy's doing, but she can't, force herself to be nice to her. And she's like, well, it'll be a big imposition, but I suppose I'll have to get it taken all in because you're such a fatty, but the thing is Emily doesn't, other than, getting hit by the car and not being able to go to Paris herself, she still gets to keep her job. And she's apparently a big part in the second movie. So I guess things worked out for her and she's got a good job in the second movie. I don't know, but apparently Emily Blunt has a huge part in the second movie. And she gets all of the clothing she wanted, Yeah, she had that one little setback where she missed that one trip, but presumably the next year she probably got to go. And she still got all the clothes and swag and stuff. Other than the fact that yeah, okay, the journalist guy that slept with Andy, yeah, he kind of got screwed a little bit because he was going to move to the magazine when the French woman took over, he was going to be her right-hand man or whatever.
He was basically going to take Stanley Tucci's job.
Yeah, but the thing is he was already supposedly a pretty big deal. And so he didn't go down a peg. It's just well, he didn't get a job he wanted, but he didn't really suffer, So it wasn't like he lost anything. He just didn't gain by the end of the movie.
I mean, he slept with Anne Hathaway, so that's about it.
Well, I mean, yeah, he gained in that respect, I suppose. But Stanley Tucci, okay, yeah, he missed out on the job, but he basically ends up in the same place he was at the start. At worst, the comeuppance for these people is they just end up where they started. And yeah, Andy at the end of the movie, she gets a job that is more in line with what she wanted at the beginning of the movie, But
I think the only thing is that, okay, backtrack for a minute here, because the entire reason she quits is because Miranda tells Andy that they're the same, that they're willing to screw over other people for their own benefit, which Andy takes great offense to. I didn't take, Emily's position here. You gave it to me. You did not give me a choice. So it's not like I begged you to take me. This was supposed to be Emily, not me. You willfully screwed over people who were loyal to you and just so you could keep your position. It's enough of an impression that Miranda basically gives Andy's new employer kind of a letter of recommendation. She was the worst assistant I ever had, but you'd be an idiot not to hire her. So obviously she had some sort of impression on her that she said, hey, yeah, give her a shot. So she was completely unsuited for my world, but she's perfect for your world.
I think in a way, the person who loses the most over the course of this plot is Andy. Because Andy has, her relationship with her father suffers during the course of this film. We hadn't really gotten into that, but there's some scenes between her and her father where he's like, hey, you're letting this woman walk all over you and you need to stop that,
Yeah, you could have gone to law school. You were accepted into, I think, yeah, she was accepted into a high quality law school, but she said no because she wanted to be a journalist. And like I said earlier, the only thing she's writing is emails. So that relationship with her father suffers because of that. Her father supports her wanting to be a journalist and not a lawyer. What has she done to push forward that dream of being a journalist instead of just having this woman walk all over her?
We see that her relationship with the two friends that we mentioned earlier goes downhill.
You know, they like the swag that they're getting, but like they're trying to hang out with her like they used to, and she just doesn't have the time anymore because she's 24/7 Miranda's assistant.
And also her personality starts changing, you know? And they don't like that. You know, she gets caught at the party flirting with the, you know, the other journalist dude. And her friend Lily sees her flirting with the, you know, and Andy's like, it's just a work thing. She's like, it doesn't look like a work thing. You know? You sure that's a work thing? And so it's very obvious to her friends that she's changed. And so by the end of the movie, she's not really hanging out with them anymore. And then, of course, there's her boyfriend who he's like, look, you know, I don't care what your job is. I just care that you do it with integrity. And right now, you are not being very ethical in the way that you are doing your job, and I don't like it. You're turning into Miranda. And they break up.
Yeah, so at the end of the movie, they have a reconciliation. She says, you were right. I was turning into her and I couldn't stand it. But they're not together anymore. They don't get back together. A different movie would have had them come back together. And I'm kind of glad that this movie doesn't do that. That is probably the most realistic of this movie, is that she's changed so much that, like I said, she's no longer the girl he fell in love with. Not trying to be mean. And I know a lot of people want to villainize him, but he's being honest. At the end of the movie, she's saying that he was right about what he was saying to her.
She's not mad at him at all in that final scene. In fact, they are so not together that he has just, you know, they live in New York and he has just accepted a sous chef position in Boston. And she is legitimately happy for him.
I'll miss your grilled cheese sandwiches.
Did you see that grilled cheese he made her? I would miss that grilled cheese too. That grilled cheese looked absolutely amazeballs. If somebody made...
Because he was using high quality cheese in those grills. He wasn't just using supermarket Velveeta.
Yeah. I mean, and I say this as a person who has like a brand new fresh package of Velveeta in the fridge right now because I was going to make grilled cheese later tonight. So I'm not against like a Velveeta grilled cheese. Don't get me wrong.
He works in a high quality restaurant. He has access to high quality ingredients. And yeah, he's using it to make grilled cheese sandwiches for his girlfriend.
I mean, I will quote that the Boondocks in that you can't take down white supremacist power structure with cheese. But to quote a different meme, you can fascinate a woman with a piece of cheese, and I am the woman you can fascinate with cheese. You have been out to dinner with me. You have absolutely seen me destroy cheese. If somebody made me like a really good grilled cheese sandwich, like that there you go. That's the way to my heart. But I will say that Gordon Ramsay need not apply in this. And if you've never seen Gordon Ramsay attempt to make a grilled cheese, go look that up. And I am sorry I have introduced you to that horror. Anyway, but back to Andy and Nate. I think my favorite part of this movie, like you said, is that Andy and Nate are not together at the end, but that it is amicable and that Andy admits, like, you were correct to break up with me. I was turning into an awful person, and I have a lot to learn and make up for.
Not every breakup becomes amicable. Not every breakup becomes a friendship. You know, while I like the reality of them not getting back together at the movie, there is that ray of hope. There is that little bit of happy ending that they are still remaining friends, even though he is moving to Boston.
Honestly, I'm not even sure when I watched the movie if I feel like they're like really going to be friends. Like, I have a feeling that this is going to be a couple that maybe just kind of, they friend each other on Facebook, and then, you know, they just kind of like each other's pictures now and then, but they're not like legit friends, you know?
Like, if he comes up to New York, they'll probably have a cup of coffee together. She's in Boston. She might go to his restaurant, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, you might get the obligatory like Facebook happy birthday once a year, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. But it's not they're not like actually good friends. Like they don't talk on the regular, you know. Like there have been people that I have dated before that I have remained legitimate like good friends with in the sense of talking regularly, going out to dinner with, being invited to their weddings, that sort of thing. I look at the way this movie ends, and that is not the sense that I get from Andy and Nate. I get the sense of this is amicable enough that they'll probably keep in touch and, talk once a year or something. And if they're in the area, like you said, they might go out for coffee or she might visit his restaurant. But that's about it. Now, we haven't seen the sequel. Who knows? There may be an entire like plot point where like they're married and have kids 20 years later. Who knows?
I'm looking at the cast list. I'm not seeing Nate in the cast list, so I don't know.
Okay. But yeah,
But
just taking this as a movie on its own, you know, uh, that's the feeling I get when I watch this. They dropped her friends. Like, by the time she goes to Paris, like, her friends are gone from the story.
yeah, and that's probably because she had changed, and they like didn't really want to be associated or whatever. I don't know. Again, haven't read the book, so I don't know. I don't even know if these friends are even in the book.
Let me ask you a question as someone watching the movie for the first time. Did you feel that the movie was kind of trucking along, doing its thing, and then it goes to Paris and the entire I don't know. I don't know whether to call it the tone, the pacing, or whatever, but I feel like once we go to Paris, this becomes like a bizarrely different movie.
It kind of does, because this is a 2-hour movie, and it kind of does drag up until the point where they go to Paris. And then the pacing picks up amazingly. It is a much better paced segment of the movie.
Is that really your take on it? Because mine is exactly the opposite. I really enjoy the movie more until they get to Paris, and then I feel like the movie just grinds to an absolute halt. That's very interesting to me. And I'm not saying one of us is right and one of us is wrong, but I find it fascinating that's the difference in our opinion, because I have always felt that when they get to Paris, the movie is less interesting to me. So what made it more interesting to you? Because I'm really fascinated to know this.
I think it's because there's more drama involved. It's that, okay, it's post breakup. So now it looks like, she's a free woman. She's going to sleep with, this other journalist guy. And then we're going to push out Miranda. We're going to bring in this French editor and this, that, and the other. And, Stanley Tucci's going to get his dream job. And all of these plot points that were slowly but surely built up in the first part of the movie now come to a head in the second part. And now the pacing picks up. And everything comes to a head, and it kind of becomes for me, a more interesting thing, because now you want to see where all of these pieces are heading towards. And yeah, everyone kind of, Miranda's the only one that wins and everyone else stays where they're at.
See, to me, the reason why I find it a little more boring, I think, is because I do not feel the connection between the characters in the first part of the movie and the characters once they get to Paris. Now, I know all these characters have been set up, okay? I know that we have met Jacqueline, okay? But we meet Jacqueline as just she attends a party and we get like, Miranda does not like her. And that is our entire context for this woman. And then we get to Paris and suddenly it's like, oh, they've decided to give her Miranda's job. And to me, that comes out of nowhere. And it feels like they just like dropped the woman into that party sequence so that when we get to Paris and they want to have drama, we're not going, well, who's this chick? That they can at least go, see, we set it up earlier because we put her in that party. And the thing is like, okay, so Christian, that journalist that sleeps with Andy, he's a journalist and Andy admires him as a journalist, okay? But what's the job that he's apparently going to have when Jacqueline takes over for Miranda? Apparently, he's going to have, like, Nigel's old job. But the thing is like, Nigel is, like, the guy who knows everything about fashion. And that's not what Christian knows about, apparently. Because why would Andy give a crap about him as a journalist if he was a fashion writer? She's not into fashion, right? So why is he wanting Nigel's job, which seems to be like the guy who knows how to dress Anne Hathaway in couture, you know? Like, you get what I mean? So the fact that, like, suddenly he's wanting that job, I mean, maybe I misunderstood the job that he's getting. Maybe he was getting a different job. I don't know. I've never really understood how he was connected to that, other than he was going to benefit from this somehow. But all of a sudden, it's like now he's caught up in that somehow, and I felt like we just needed to work him into the plot to make him like more of a bad guy.
I mean, he's probably an amalgamation of several people that we need to put all of these we need to put this character in these situations, but in real life, they were several people. We're just going to combine them into one character. I'm not even talking about the book. I'm talking about the real events that inspired the book.
Yeah, and I mean, that's probably true. I'm just taking this as a film and the way that they plot the film. I'm not talking about how it mirrors real life. I'm not talking about how it goes from the book. I am just talking about how the film sets up the events in the film. Okay? And to me, I do not feel like what happens in Paris is set up properly in the earlier part of the film. I do not feel like there is any setup that Miranda might be in danger of losing her job. You know, all of a sudden, they're doing the morning after, and Christian goes like, yeah, Jacqueline's going to take over Miranda's job. And then it's like, well, wait, where was the setup that they're upset with Miranda's performance?
There is no setup, but that's why it comes as a shock to Andy, because she wasn't aware of it. We're not aware of it.
But the thing is that there should be something in the background. Like, there should be something that maybe Andy just misses, but the audience is aware of. Like, you overhear the end of a phone conversation or a meeting that, like, Andy is too busy to notice, but the audience can hear. Like, as Andy is bringing coffee in the room, you can hear the end of, like, Miranda's boss telling Miranda, like, well, the third quarter sales figures are down or whatever. And it doesn't have to be major. It's just in the background, and Andy doesn't notice because Andy is focused on Andy's job.
Like, the entire thing comes down to, and as Christian says it, Jacqueline's younger and Jacqueline will work cheaper. That is it. That is all we get. So it comes down to Miranda's old and she's been doing it so long that they can no longer afford to pay her. So we need someone younger and someone who will work cheaper. That is it. She hasn't done nothing wrong with the paper. The magazine is doing great. She still, has influence over the fashion industry, but it's just that she's old and she's becoming too expensive to pay.
I mean, then there should have been a conversation of like, well, Runway magazine, Miranda is like the longest serving editor-in-chief of a fashion magazine or whatever. Fashion Critique magazine just got rid of their editor-in-chief because they wanted to go in a younger direction and hire somebody that was cheaper or whatever. You can say that in a background, thing of it happening to somebody else or whatever, and that still sets up that it could happen to Miranda. But I'm still saying that as a viewer who has seen this movie multiple times, I always feel like and I know it's supposed to be a blindside to Miranda, but I think it should not be a blindside to the audience when you go back and look at the movie.
It's not a blindside to Miranda.
Well, it's not a blindside to Miranda, but I mean, it shouldn't be a blindside to the audience when you go back and rewatch a movie. You should go like, oh, it was a blindside to me when I first watched it because I wasn't paying enough attention or I missed these clues. But I do think that any legitimate, surprise or twist or drama in a movie should be set up to the point where that if you go back and rewatch it, you can always point to, I may have personally missed it, but there are clues or reasons to suspect or things that were set up. And I, as a person who loves stories, always think that a story owes it to an audience to set things up that even if you miss it the first time, you should be able to go back on a second reading or watching or whatever and be able to say, that's where they set that up. And I have seen this film multiple times, and I still can't tell you where in the film they set this up, and that annoys me.
The party probably would be the best place to do it, because you get Jacqueline there. Miranda doesn't like Jacqueline. We don't need a reason why they don't like each other. All we need to know is they don't like each other, but maybe a background conversation between Miranda and the owner of the magazine could have it, and then Miranda just storms off. What's going on over there? I don't know. They've been they've been having arguments for the last couple of weeks, and I guess it finally blew up. And then you find out that's why they're having the arguments, is because the owner of the magazine wants to replace Miranda with someone young.
Or when Emily says, Miranda doesn't like Jacqueline, maybe Andy could say, why doesn't Miranda like Jacqueline? And she says oh, she thinks Jacqueline wants her position one day or something, Jacqueline will not be sated just being in charge of the Paris, the French version of Runway. She wants to be, the big cheese, le grand fromage of the whole thing.
She doesn't want the spinoff. She wants the main title.
Exactly. And that could also set it up. I mean, there's dozens of ways you could have done it, and it would have literally just took one single line in the film. And the fact that they didn't even do that.
It didn't bother me when I watched it, and I kind of dug the blind side. Okay, now it kind of makes sense in a weird way, at least to me. But yeah, this is the first watch for me. I never seen this movie in the 20 years that this movie has existed. I'm still not the audience for this movie. Coming into the, actually sitting in, actually finally watching this movie to see if this was the hype and all that. Yeah, no. To kind of, answer the question early, I did not see the magic in this movie. I know there are people that did. Obviously, the sequel exists. Obviously, there's been people who has wanted this sequel for 20 years, and they're finally getting it. Good for you. There are no good people in this movie. The only, quote, good people are Andy's friends, and they're removed pretty much 2/3 into this movie.
The only reason why they might be possibly good people is because we don't get enough of them to know.
Possibly. And again, the fact that the fandom surrounding this movie wants to villainize Nate, I can understand that because he does kind of come up as a bit of an asshole when he is trying to talk to her about how she's changed as a person. There could have been a different choice of words, a different tone in his voice that he could have used to explain the situation, but he did come off kind of as an asshole, even though he is right.
Are we classifying this under you're not wrong, but you're still an asshole?
Yes. You're out of line, but you're right, to quote the meme.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are no good people. Even Andy, who starts off quote unquote innocent, kind of gets into the world and is, if she hadn't made one or two different decisions, she would be Miranda. If she was in that car ride and says, yes, I am just like you, I am going to be like you, we can do all these things and whatever, and she would have been, it would have given a completely different tone to the end of the movie. In that there are no good people in this movie, and no one gets their comeuppance. If anything, most of Miranda's employees lateral move at best, or they don't move at all. And that's not really a comeuppance. Miranda herself wins. She gets to keep her position at the magazine. Nothing changes. Yes, she goes through a divorce and all that, but like you said, that doesn't seem to even be something she's worried about. She's worried about her position as editor-in-chief at Runway. But she gets where she stays. Even Andy herself kind of becomes not a good person. Yeah, she has her redemption moment where she realizes she is becoming Miranda and gets out of the situation, but she's still not in the clear, as it were. Even though she does tell Nate that he's right, she still more or less is the same person. Like, she still goes into the next job kind of doing the same thing. We don't, more or less, at least in the little bit we do see, she waves to Miranda when they cross paths as if she's still trying to be nice to her. So yeah, they're very, there are no good people in this movie. No one gets their comeuppance. They either don't move at all or they win. Miranda wins at the end. So what was the point? So that doesn't really give me a sense of magic.
Of all the bad people in here, the only one that seems to suffer any sort of comeuppance in any way is Andy herself. Like we said, she has problems with her father. She breaks up with her friends. She breaks up with her boyfriend. She suffers under Miranda. Yeah, she ends up getting a job that she wanted more at the end, and it seems kind of hopeful, but she is kind of on her own at the end, and she has changed a lot and not for the better. And even at one point, there is a point, like right after the party, the party that Jacqueline shows up at, that we were just talking about, where she runs into Christian and she mentions to him, like, I've discovered I'm not as good a person as I thought I was. And she's not being hyperbolic in that. Like, she's realized at that point, and this is before her boyfriend even breaks up with her and points it out to her that she's turning into Miranda. But she's already begun to realize in herself that she is changing and not for the better.
I mean, if anything, Jacqueline kind of wins too, because she gets the job that she never even thought about getting, which was supposed to be Stanley Tucci's job, and she's getting paid an obscene amount of money.
Yeah, and the thing is we don't really know enough about Jacqueline to say whether or not she's a horrible person. I mean, we kind of assume she is because she's in that world. We don't know enough about her to know what she's like as a person. We know Miranda doesn't like her, but that doesn't really tell us anything about her personality. Miranda is awful. Why would we trust her? And other than the fact that she has a similar job to Miranda, which doesn't bode well for her, it's not exactly like we're told that she stabbed Miranda in the back or that she was, it's just she was chosen for this job. Maybe she campaigned for it. Maybe she, slept with the guy who owned the magazine or something. We don't know. We have no idea. She might have just been offered the job and thought Miranda was gonna retire or something. We have no idea. So the fact that Jacqueline just ends up with this really high paying job that she didn't even try for because Miranda was trying to shunt her down a different career path to get her out of the way. I mean, she might have lucked out. I mean, she definitely lucked out in the sense of she was going to get paid a lot more money than the job was going to pay her if she'd have taken over the magazine. But, we don't know if she is a bad person who lucked out or if she was a decent person who just was in the right/wrong place at the right/wrong time, you know? However, since we're kind of nearing the end of the episode here, you've already kind of answered the question. Well, I will answer the question of whether or not this has magic. And for me, it's going to be another one of those complex answers. Because there are parts of this movie that I genuinely do like. And most of it has to do with the acting. Every actor in this absolutely nails their part. Meryl Streep is the perfect villain in this piece. And despite the one humanizing bit of she loves her kids and she's sad about her divorce, make no mistake about it, Miranda Priestley is a villain. She is awful. There is no way there is no way you can tell me she could not do her job and be a decent human being. Stanley Tucci delivers every one of his lines absolutely perfectly. Every one of them is a banger. They all make you laugh, despite the fact that he is saying the most horrific things, Nigel is an absolute garbage character as far as if he were a real person that I had to interact with, I would hate him. But he is one of those, catty gays that you like to watch on TV when they're fictional. Anne Hathaway is a vision as always on screen, Emily Blunt is so fun in that character. It's like when Andy says, wish me luck, and she just turns around and goes, no, shan't. Yeah, I mean, it's just so perfectly delivered, And once again, absolutely garbage human if this is a real person, but it's portrayed so well, it's acted so well, you can't fault the actor, They absolutely, everybody in this film understood the assignment. And the assignment was, you are playing the most awful people on the planet. So it's just, yeah. So in that sense, yes, it has the magic because it is an amazing tour de force of acting. This is a master class in how to portray a horrible character and still have the audience want to watch you. But as far as everything about this movie otherwise in the, I don't know if you would call it the morals or the point of the story, if it even has one and everything. It's just such garbage,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that every film has to have a happy ending or whatever, but I do like my fiction to show that sometimes bad people do get what's coming to them. I think because it happens so rarely in real life, I like seeing it in fiction.
Like I said, the ending is realistic. The couple doesn't get back together, and the bad people win. So that is realistic.
Well,
in
yeah, I
that
mean,
regard.
it is realistic, but I do kind of wish that, there's a quote that sometimes gets attributed to G.K. Chesterton. I don't know if it's really by him or not, which is that you don't put dragons in fairy tales to let children know that dragons exist. Like, children already know that dragons exist, meaning bad things exist. You put dragons in fairy tales to let children know that dragons can be defeated, you know?
And she is the dragon lady.
Yeah, and so, like, yes, sometimes you need to show that, I mean, we'll come back to it because, this was done under Fox originally, of course, but, we're a Disney-centered podcast, so let's talk about Disney. Disney changed all the fairy tales and makes kids think that everything comes out, you know, happy endings and everybody gets their Prince Charming and, whatever. And okay, you can, and we often do, take issue with the way that Disney has done a lot of their films and, some of their propaganda over the years. Fine. But I think that I agree with that idea, whether or not it was Chesterton that came up with it or not, is that it is very obvious if you live in the world that horrible things and horrible people exist. If you live to be 10 years old, you're going to run into it. And I think that the use of fiction a lot of times is to give us hope, and rebellions are built on hope. I don't know if you've heard that before.
I heard.
But, I think sometimes you need stories that give you hope that sometimes bad people can get what's coming to them, whether or not that's like, karma in a universal sense or justice in a legal sense, or maybe just justice in a social sense, whether you want to call it cancel culture or whatever, but, some kind of social, comeuppance. And yes, I get that this was based on a true story, and in reality, Anna Wintour still going strong. And if even a third of this is based in reality, maybe she shouldn't be. Because if someone acted like Miranda Priestly, even a third of what Miranda Priestly is shown to act like, that is a horrible, toxic person, and they should not be in charge of anyone, And I'm not saying that that's accurate to Anna Wintour, because I don't know the real story there. We really have like one person's fictionalized account of their job. Okay? So I'm not saying it's true or not. But I'm just saying that if Miranda Priestly was a real person, she does not deserve her position. She does not deserve to be a manager at a McDonald's if you're going to treat people like that. And it would be nice to see at least some, yes, it's the Devil Wears Prada. We're admitting she's the devil. But within the course of the movie, like, other than the fact that everybody admits that nobody likes her, do something about it, even if it's just fictional. Good grief, if I was writing about horrible jobs and bosses that I had, I would at least write some sort of comeuppance for that, just to make up for the fact that it didn't happen in real life,
Some catharsis,
Yes, that's what I want that this movie is lacking. That's where it lacks the magic, is that there's no catharsis in this movie.
Like, if she was pushed out, like Miranda was pushed out of her position, replaced with a younger editor, and all of these things happen, it's like there would be some comeuppance. But no, we have to have her be smarter than everybody else, and I knew they were going to replace me, so I screwed everybody else over. Like, if she had gotten replaced and then she's out of the industry, and then, maybe some sort of flash forward where Andy is doing this interview with Miranda years later, and she's been out of the fashion industry for years. Ever since she got replaced at Runway, she's no longer seen as the the eye of fashion that she once was. She's just irrelevant. Whatever happened to Miranda Priestley?
Yeah.
But the books did get some sequels. About 10 years ago, the author wrote a sequel. I'm guessing she wrote her own sequel before Hollywood could, called Revenge Wears Prada, The Devil Returns, which was followed up in 2018 by a third novel in the series, When Life Gives You Lululemons. Neither of those books were used as the basis of the sequel. So yeah, Disney, Fox, whatever. Disney has just decided to do their own story for the second film, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, so I think that's all we can say about The Devil Wears Prada. As for next week, it is time for us, Kiki, to return to the world of the Disney Channel original movie. And this came recommended because of who's in it. That would be two people that are big stars now, but back then they were just Disney kids. That would be Selena Gomez and Demi Lovato. A little movie called The Princess Protection Program. I'd never seen this movie.
Yeah, me neither. So first watch for both of us. It'll be interesting to see how it lands.
So yeah, so come back next week for The Princess Protection Program, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here.
Keep the conversation going. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic.
We are also on Blue Sky, rewatchingthemagic.bsky.social. And new episodes are available at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com and youtube.com/@rewatchingthemagic. Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.
We know that right now, things are tough.
But in the words of Jim Henson, the only way the magic works is by hard work. But hard work can be fun.
Check out our show notes for ways that you can help.